Welcome to Fresh Outlook, where we talk about the most talked about topics of the week. I'm Toschi. We thank you for joining us. This week, we're going to discuss the serious situation in Syria. Tensions remain high around the world. President Obama continues to try to get support from the international community to support military action against Syria. He plans to address the American public on Tuesday, September 10th. Of course, that is the night before the 12th anniversary of the terror attacks. We will also talk about how September 11th has changed the United States and the world, both for the good and the bad. And finally, deal makers have wrapped up 3 multi-billion-dollar acquisitions this week. But is this good business? We begin our program with a look at Syria first. The White House believes that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad gassed more than 1,400 people to death, including more than 400 children. President Obama says the world must act to demonstrate that it will not tolerate the use of chemical weapons under any circumstances. But will he have support from other world leaders, and will he have support from the American people?
Amateur video uploaded to the internet by activists shows rebel fighters engaged in fierce gunfights. The assault is centered in the ancient Christian village of Ma'alula, which is on a UNESCO list of tentative World Heritage Sites. The unrest was sparked when a rebel fighter blew himself up at a regime checkpoint at the entrance to the village, which is about 40 miles northeast of Damascus. Despite a heavy army presence, the rebels patrol the streets on foot and in vehicles. Rebels and regime forces also clashed on the outskirts of the capital, according to amateur video. Meanwhile, 3 Russian Navy warships are on their way to the Mediterranean to take over operations in the region. They pass through Turkey's Bosphorus Strait. U.S. President Barack Obama has won the backing of key figures in Congress as well as from several world leaders in his call for limited military strikes against Syria. Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to talk President Obama out of any military action as punishment for President Bashar al-Assad's suspected use of chemical weapons. The Syrian conflict started in March 2011 as largely peaceful protests against the rule of President Bashar al-Assad. It turned into a civil war after opposition supporters took up arms to fight a government crackdown on dissent.
We welcome to the program now former White House aide Dee Dee Benkie. We also welcome Bronner, Director of Global Relations for Rutgers University and also Executive Director of U.S. Academics for Peace. And we also are joined by media analyst Jackie Guzda, and we welcome all 3 of you to this show. I want to first start off by talking, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Bronner. We're going to start off by asking you to maybe give us a little background, because you actually have met Bashar al-Assad. So if you can sort of take us through your initial reactions when you first met him, and what you feel of him.
Well, it's important to remember this is about five years ago. Bashar al-Assad was basically acclaimed for being a reformer. Mm-hmm. He spoke much about democracy and about opening up. His wife, a very elegant Western woman, knowledgeable about the West, spoke much about computers, bringing in computers to their schools. From what we saw, women were basically treated very well, certainly relative to other places.
Absolutely, and I was going to even say, we talked about this before the show. I mean, I've been to Damascus, and you would go to a cafe and you would see women in miniskirts with women in burqas, and it was very much welcomed.
Yeah, and actually, President Assad pointed that out, and he said, look, I asked him straight out why these emergency laws, which justified his dictatorship, were still in operation, and he said, what will happen if they're lifted is there'll be a fundamental chasm between the Islamic radicals and secularists.
And that's what we're seeing right now.
That's what we're seeing.
We also are seeing a rather hawkish president that we have not really seen before. Dee Dee, I just want to ask you, reaction. We're seeing some of the Republicans actually, King in New York is actually saying he will cross party lines and he will vote for military strikes, and so are some other Republicans. What is basically this week going to look like for a lot of the politicians?
I think it's going to be very bad for the president, and I think he's actually bungled this. Actually, we were on last week. We were able to watch the president, and it was very strange what's happened in the last week, because he was very enthusiastic about it and strong, and then later in the week, it seems to be he's completely weakened, because he has all of these Republicans and Democrats on his own side, that are not for this, and he's wavering, and he's just not handling it well at all. It's just completely bungled, and this could very well be his Vietnam, I think, if he does not turn it around.
Jackie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm sorry, he's a miracle worker. Look what he's done. He's taken the Republican Party, the party of war, the party of battle, and turned them into a bunch of peaceniks. It's a miracle. I'm kidding.
But, I mean, right now we are actually seeing something that could, I mean, some people are saying this, and Mr. Bronner, I'll ask you to address this. Some people are saying that if we do strike in Syria, this could escalate into a world conflict. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I have to say I agree with Dee Dee. I think the president is bungling this.
Well, a lot of people say that. Well, a lot of people have said that something should have been done. You know, as we said, March
that's not,
2011.
I think, why he bungled it. This is not, in my view, an intervention would be an enormous mistake. It'd be an enormous mistake for a number of reasons. One, there's not domestic support for it. Secondly, the missile strikes serve no strategic purpose. If they serve neither nation building nor even regime change.
Let's talk about the limited. That's the problem. This
what
limited
is
strike,
limited?
He doesn't, yeah, exactly. What is limited? You don't know what limited is. Look what happened in World War I. That was supposed to be limited, and that escalated, and there was never supposed to be a World War I. That happens all the time.
And I do want to address the American people. The latest poll by NBC says that 80% of the American people do not want to see any kind of conflict in Syria. So that actually substantiates that point that you were making.
And I think what's happening here is that the president made a mistake in laying down the red line.
Yes.
And insofar as he made it, now he feels he has to back it up.
But now he's saying he didn't even say it. He goes, oh no, it wasn't me, it was the world. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He is in way over his head, and he has completely mishandled this whole thing, which is why I think the American people see that, members of Congress see that, and they're like, there's no way we can have this guy go forward.
What did you think about these talks with they've been called substantial talks with Putin, photo ops, other people have been calling them that. Dee Dee first.
I don't think substantial at all. I mean, Putin's not going to change his mind. And, you know, and here we have, who do we have? France? And we have very few people that want this to happen. We've got China, and then you've got the Soviet Union. And usually it wouldn't matter, but this time they are ready to pounce, and it's a very dangerous situation. So I'm very disappointed in the president because he's been so weak on this, and that's why no one will go forward. I mean, if it was going to be a substantial strike, perhaps, but the way he has discussed it, he has no clue what he is talking about.
I'm sorry, Jackie?
Yeah, no, I think he has a big clue about what he's talking about. I am not in favor of a military strike. We screwed up when it came to Iraq. It caused the people
We're not talking about Iraq.
All right, let me
at
finish.
all. Everybody always wants to do that.
It caused the people in the Middle East not to favor the United States. I don't think we should go in there and have another military strike, because it's going to get the people in the Middle East to have the same negative attitude towards the people of the United States that they did after Iraq. However, I see that Obama has had a clear vision of what he wanted the whole time.
No, he hasn't.
Look, you've got to make a choice. For 2 years, they've been saying he's got to take action. He's got to take action.
But we didn't hear from President Obama for a long time.
He did not.
But I do want to hear from Mr. Bronner. What do you think about this?
Well, I think the idea of taking action, I mean, everybody says do something, but it's very unclear what it is that anybody wants to do. You don't just do something to do something. There has to be some connection between what you do and a certain set of goals you want to achieve.
Let me ask you a question. As the executive director of the U.S. Academics for Peace, we've seen 100,000 people killed. We believe that there's evidence that 1,400 people have been gassed, including 400 children. What do you do?
At the moment, in my view, one steps back. There's certain times when you can't do anything, and we just got to admit that. If the United States were to go in there, we would look, first of all, hypocritical. Between drone just the drone strikes alone have cost more lives than this chemical bombing. This is a symbolic issue. We have to remember that. There have been over 100,000 people who've died. There are 2 million refugees, and another 250 to 400,000 people wounded. From their standpoint, from the standpoint of the Middle East, this is a continuation. This would be seen as a continuation of the failed policies in Afghanistan and Iraq. I think we'd be blamed for any civilian deaths. And here's the worst thing that's not talked about. The United States, if it moves in this direction, would align itself with the 2 most hated countries in the Middle East, which is Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And wherever you go in the Middle East, among Sunnis and, weirdly enough, and Shia, you'll find this kind of critique. And this is exactly what the United States doesn't need, especially since it has no support from the UN, the Arab League, or the Group of 20.
Okay, Dee Dee?
It's just obvious as the week went on that President Obama really, I don't think he even cares about Syria. I think he cares about Obamacare being implemented October 1st. He's got the unions coming out against him. He's got the budget problem. I think this is just a distraction. And that is not the way you lead, which is why we can't go in with the plan that he has, because he doesn't have a plan.
Well, I used the word hawkish before.
Not
we
hawkish.
did see a hawkish
Fakish.
president. Wait, I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, he's being fakish. I mean, it's just a fake. I don't even think he probably even plans to do anything. I think he's just saying that to distract, and that's why I'm upset about it, because I think he doesn't mean a word he says. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He is a mess right now. I think this is the worst time of his career ever.
This is the worst time of his career ever, but I think he's got Syria at the top of his list.
Only to distract from the problems at home.
Oh,
and
please.
to keep Congress busy for the next 2 weeks. And guess what? He's not getting the vote, so he's failing there. He's not going to get the vote. And then that would be the excuse. That's his cover. So, oh, nobody could be mad at me. Look, it's Congress. That's what he's doing.
A lot of people are saying this is going to really be the make or break of his presidency.
Break?
Right.
It's broken.
And whether or not that's to be debated or not right now, I mean, right now there is a serious...
I think it's going to be it's going to be, this is, as I say, I agree with Dee Dee. I think this has been bungled. Whether this is going to
when you say bungled, though, would you have said that he should have intervened earlier?
No,
or?
I think that it was bungled as soon as he spoke about the red line.
That's right.
And if one's going to do this, if one's going to intervene in a serious way, one has to have some idea who the opposition is that one's going to support.
Well, I want to talk about that next. We're going to take a quick break, but we want to talk about who those rebels are exactly.
Yeah,
and that's one of the biggest questions that, of course, we have in Syria. Don't go away, everyone. We will be right back, and we will continue our discussions on Syria. The State Department has issued a new alert on Thursday, warning against non-essential travel to Iraq and citing terrorist activity at levels unseen since 2008.